Okay, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Welcome once again to our YouTube space. Today we want to focus on biology and we want to focus on a topic called reception, response, and coordination. This is a topic in book 4, topic 3. Remember, in book 4, that is Form 4 work, we have 4 topics. The first topic is called genetics. The second topic is called evolution. The third topic is this one, which is on your screen, reception, response, and coordination. And lastly, the fourth topic, which is now the end of book 4, is called support and movement. So today we want to focus on reception, response, and coordination because it is very important. In all biology exam, there is always going to be a question that is related to this topic. Therefore, it is very important for us to understand it in detail. Okay, let's move on. So, reception. So, reception is all about receiving something. Okay, reception, because you have heard of receptionist. So the receptionist, they are able to guide the visitors, they're able to receive the guests or something. So reception, it means that there's something we are receiving. Response is basically giving a feedback. When you give a feedback, okay? And coordination is now ensuring that everything works well, okay? Now, so this thing, it is related to living organism. So now if you focus on how we understand this topic, it would be how living organisms, they are able to receive something called the changes in the environment, which we call the stimuli, and how do they respond to them after receiving those changes in the environment, and how their body coordinates to ensure they give appropriate response. So that is what we'll be talking about. So the very first thing that you need to know in this topic is something called irritability. So that is the first thing that you need to know about. The definition of a term called irritability. In exam, biology exam, you can be asked, what is irritability? So what is irritability? Irritability is the ability of living organism to detect changes in the environment and respond accordingly. So after detecting the change in the environment, you don't just sit there, you respond accordingly. For example, if I take an iron box that is hot, okay, I take an iron box that is hot and I put it on your skin. Of course, you're going to feel that heat and you're going to remove your hand. You don't just cry and leave your hand still in contact with the iron box. No, you remove your hand. So you detect the change, then you respond. Okay, if you see there's a snake and you fear snakes, so you'll basically run away as you scream or whatever. So you see it, then you respond in a certain way that you'd want to respond. So in exam, you might be asked irritability. An English word for irritability would be sensitivity. So I believe you have captured that. It is the ability. Ability of living organism is the ability of living organism to detect changes in the environment and respond to them accordingly. Appropriately or accordingly. So you can be asked something like this in an exam. So it is the ability of living organism to detect changes in the environment and respond to them accordingly. So that is irritability. Sometimes as well, you can also be asked, what is the importance of irritability? Yeah, that can also be a question. So sometimes you can also be asked, what is the importance of irritability? Okay? Yes, so the main importance of irritability, it will enable the living organism to move away from harmful predators, or harmful condition. So enable the living organism to escape predators, enables the living organism to avoid harmful environments or harmful conditions. For example, let's say it is hot, there's a lot of the heat from the sun. So you'll find that you'll maybe you'll scan your environment, and maybe you'll go and sit under a tree, under a shade, or even in the house. Okay, so because of irritability, after feeling a lot of heat, now you'll be moving to a better place. So it enables the living organism to escape predators. Or also, maybe let's say the lion is chasing maybe an antelope, so the antelope will run so that it could avoid being attacked by the lion. So something like that. So they can also ask the importance. After that, the receptors and effectors, we'll talk about them as we there's something down there that will capture them at that point. So there's something called the stimuli. The stimuli. Stimuli is in plural. In singular, we call it stimulus. Stimulus. So types of stimulus or type of stimuli. So what is a stimuli? A stimuli is basically a change in the environment. For example, heat, because when there's heat, when there's cold, when there is pressure, stimuli is basically something that can make you to react. Okay? Yes, temperature, these are now the internal ones. Okay? Something that can make a living organism to react. That gap, something that can make a living organism to maybe not feel comfortable. You'll try to basically balance it or correct it. So those are stimuli. Something that is making the living organism to have some change. So those are the stimuli. Temperature, things like this one. So touch, when maybe somebody has touched you and you don't want them to touch you, it is the touch that is making you maybe you are trying to remove their hand because you want them not to touch you, something like that. Now we want to talk now about the receptors and the effectors. Remember, I've just told you up there that I want to talk about them in the lower part here. So receptors and effectors. So receptors, these are now the organs which they receive the stimuli. So these are the organs that they receive the stimuli. Effectors are now the organs that they bring about the response. So the effectors, they bring about the response. It is the effectors that will make you now respond appropriately. Let me give you an example. Let's say there's pressure. Somebody is trying to prick you. So somebody is trying to prick your finger. So let's say there's an office pin, okay, or a needle. So somebody takes a needle or an office pin and they try to prick your finger. So when they are pricking your finger, you're going to feel that pain. So it is your skin that is receiving that pain. So your skin is a receptor. Your skin is now the receptor. Then when somebody pricks your hand, what will you do? Of course, you'll take away your hand after feeling the pain. So the skin has received the stimuli, which is now, in this case, it is the pressure from the office pin or the needle. Okay? Then after that has happened, you don't just leave your hand there. Okay? You remove your hand so that you can not feel the pain anymore. So what happens? So it is the effector that enables you to remove your hand. So in this case, it is the muscles. So the muscles that are now in your hand, the upper part of your arm, that is the upper arm, you normally have something called the biceps and the triceps. So the biceps and the tricep, they contract or relax. It depends on how you want to remove your hand, all that. So after relaxation and contraction of the biceps and the triceps of the upper arm, you'll be able to remove your hand. your finger rather, it was your finger that was being pricked, so you'll be able to remove your finger. So the receptor there is the skin, the effector are now the muscles that have enabled you to pull away your hand. So those are the difference between effectors. So now the brain coordinates the receptor and the effector, so that is the coordinator. That's why the topic is now called reception, response, and coordination. So you receive the stimuli, then the brain enforces the effector to basically bring about the response. So let's talk about types of response. Let's talk about types of response, okay? Yes, biology is life. Biology is life. Biology is interesting. Biology is very easy, simple, direct. It's very easy to get the top grades in this subject. Okay, types of response. So we have three main types of response. Okay, so the very first one is what you see there. So this one is the first one, that is Kcse. We have another one that we'll talk about. So the other one is now called the tropisms. And we have another one called the nastism. Nastisms. So we have the Kcse. So there are three of them. So we have three types of responses. We have the Kcse, we have the tropisms, and we have the nastisms. So Kcse can also be called the tactic responses. Kcse can also be called the tactic responses. Tropisms can also be called the tropic responses, and the nastisms can also be called the nastic responses. So let's start with the Kcse, which can also be called the tactic responses. So what is the definition? Let me clear this so that okay, just 1 minute. Sorry for that. Let's proceed. Sorry for that delay. Let's now proceed. So I was about to talk about the Kcse. Okay, so let's talk about the Kcse. So it's very important to know the definition of the Kcse. That is the tactic response. Now the Kcse, or the tactic response, it is unidirectional, meaning stimulus comes from one end. It involves movement of whole organism, locomotory response, and all that. Okay, Kcse, the definition of Kcse is very simple. Kcse now, if there is a certain stimuli, we will ensure that the whole living organism, it has moved from one point to another. Let me give an example. There are some of the flies that when there's light, when you switch on the security light at night, that is on the outside part of the building, you'll be able to see that there are some flies that they come towards that light. And let's look at the case of a cockroach. Normally, if there's a cockroach at night and maybe you switch on a light, you'll find that the cockroaches are running away to avoid the light. Okay, they're trying to avoid the light. So that is a tactic response, or that is Kcse. So what is this Kcse all about? So in Kcse, we expect the whole organism to move in favor of the stimuli or to move away from the stimuli. In this topic, if you move towards the stimuli, that is a positive response. If you move away from stimuli, that is a negative response. So the cockroach one, we find that the cockroaches normally they do not prefer light, so they normally run away from light. So when they run away from light, that is negative response because they're moving away from light. But in scenarios that you see, some flies, when there's light at night, they try to crowd around that light. That is a positive response because they're moving towards light. So Kcse, that is tactic response. Now it is a type of response where the whole organism moves towards or away from the stimuli. So whole organism. So the marking point of taxis is now the whole organism. Okay, mwili wa mnyama wote unakimbia kuenda kule ama unatoroka kutoka pale, mwili wake wote. Sawa sawa. Yes, so that is taxis or tactic response. That is taxis or tactic response. Now let's now focus on types of response. So types of tactic response or types of taxis. So there are numerous types of taxis that you can see on the screen. So the very first type of taxis is phototaxis. As the name suggests, photo. So phototaxis is response to variation in light intensity and direction. So if the entire body of an animal moves towards light, that will be a positive response. If it moves away from light, that will be negative response. So the example is given here. It is shown when euglena moves towards light. So there's a certain organism called euglena. When it moves towards light, that is a positive response. And the hood lice and the maggots and the termites, they normally prefer to move away from light. So that is negative response. Let's go to another type, aerotaxis. Okay, let's go to another aerotaxis. So this one is 1, this one is 2, this one is 3, 4, 5. So let's go to number 2, aerotaxis. So aerotaxis is a response to variation in oxygen concentration. So now the living organism here, the whole body of the living organism, it moves towards oxygen, or maybe it might move towards away from oxygen. So aerotaxis is now where the response is with regard to oxygen concentration. An example is the amoeba moving from an area of low oxygen concentration to an area of high oxygen concentration. So that is a positive response, because the amoeba there, it is moving towards an area that has high oxygen concentration. So the response with regard to oxygen concentration is aerotaxis. Let's go to number 3, osmotaxis. So osmotaxis is now it's the response to variation in osmotic pressure. So the stimuli there is the osmotic pressure. So osmotic pressure, we all know that from osmosis you are able to absorb a lot of water. So osmotic pressure, when you are able to absorb a lot of water, then in terms of you are osmotically active. So now there's an example of the marine crabs burrowing in sand to avoid dilution of their body fluid. So normally you find these crabs in the ocean. They normally hibernate in the sand. They hide themselves in the sand so that okay, because when they're exposed to the sun and they might lose some water, and maybe also there's a lot of osmosis that can happen as a result of those things. So just know that osmotaxis, the stimuli is osmotic pressure. Rheotaxis is now the stimuli there is water or air currents, response to variation of water or air currents. Okay, yes, for example, the butterflies. When on a windy day, you'll find that the butterflies, they normally prefer to move in the direction of the wind. Why are they moving in the direction of the wind? Because they'll be feeling the smell of the flowers. Okay, so yes, so when you move against water or air currents, or when you move in line with water and air currents, that is rheotaxis. Let's go to number 5. Number 5, we are talking about chemotaxis. So chemotaxis, as the name suggests, chemicals. Okay, so the stimuli here is chemical substances. So when an animal, remember taxis, the whole part of the organism must move. The whole organism must move. That will be the difference of taxis and other type of responses. So now here, the whole living organism, it will move towards the chemical substances or away from chemical substances. Yes, and this one is always a very common one. They normally ask it in exam. Actually, this one is the most common and they ask in the exam. That is number 5. Okay, so and the example is always the sperm cell. So the sperm cell, they normally that is the male gametes. Okay, they normally swim during copulation, and they basically swim and they move into the oviduct where they can meet the female gametes. So, and the female gametes are considered to be chemicals. So when the male gametes, they swim and move till into the oviduct to basically combine with the ovum, which is now the female gametes, and the ovum is now considered to be a chemical. That will basically be a chemotaxis, and of course it is a positive one because the male gametes, they move towards the female gametes. So in exam they normally prefer to ask you which type of response is this. Then the question now will give you the male gametes moving towards the female gametes. The answer is chemotaxis because the entire body of the male gamete swims towards the female gamete. Thermotaxis, as the name suggests, thermo, temperature. So here, response to temperature change. So when you respond to temperature change, maybe the organism move, maybe there was at some point where there was a lot of heat, the organism is able to move at a place where there is less heat, and the vice versa is also true. So that is thermotaxis. Remember, the whole living organism must move for that one to score. Now, the survival value of tactic responses. This is also a very common thing that they ask a lot. So the survival value, they ask it a lot because survival value is like the importance. The survival value is like the importance of tactic responses. Okay? Yes. So what is now the importance behind these tactic responses? What is the survival value? Why do we need taxis? Why do we need tactic responses? Why do we need these taxis in this living organism? So these are the benefits that accrue as a result of having tactic responses. So the very first one, enable organism escape from harmful stimuli. Enable organism escape from harmful stimuli, e.g. predators, because the whole organism, because in taxis the whole organism can move. So as a result of that, if there's a predator, for example, maybe the cheetah maybe is chasing after a monkey, so the monkey is able to escape because of taxis. Another one is enable organism seek favorable habitats. Enable organism seek favorable habitats and acquire resources. Yes. So because in taxis you'll be able to move from one point to another. So if you feel maybe there's low oxygen here, you move to a place that there is high oxygen concentration. If there's a high temperature, you're able to move to a place that has favorable temperature. Then another one brings about fertilization. So the chemotaxis I talked about the importance that it has. It will enable us multiply because after fertilization the life will start, and now that is now the importance. So taxis or tactic responses mainly occur in animals because it is the animals that they can move about. Plants cannot move about, but animals, they can move about. Animals can move from point A to point B, the whole organism. Okay? Yes, the whole living organism can move from one place to another. They can move about. But plants, they cannot move about. The plants move, yes, they do move. But because how do plants move? When they grow. Okay? When plants grow, they move. When they close their leaves, when they close their flowers, they also move. So they move as a result of growth. Okay? So when they increase in height, of course, they are moving. But moving about is now moving from a certain fixed point, then the entire living organism moves to another part. No, something like that plants will never do. Okay? So taxis can only occur in animals because it is animals that their whole living organism can move from one part to another. So that's why taxis will be for the animals. Let's now focus on the second one, is tropism. The second, of course, it is in plants. So the second type of response is tropism. So what is tropism? It is growth movement of the plant in response to unidirectional external stimulus. Unidirectional is basically a stimuli that is from one side. For example, if it is light, if it is light, let the light come from one side. Okay, yes, so unidirectional is basically from one direction. So we are going to put these stimuli, these changes to come from one direction. For example, let's say maybe we want to talk about light. So we ensure that we focus sunlight from one side, then the other side we let it to be dark. Then how will the plant respond? The plant will now grow towards light. I believe at some point you have always seen where if there's a building here, maybe there's an extension of a building and it is hanging and there was a plant that was growing, you normally find that is how it will behave. It will bend and basically avoid colliding with the roof, because it is trying to expose its leaves to more sunlight. So it bends so that it then later it will grow upwards so that it can get some sunlight. So something like this is tropism. So tropism, now it is the part of the plant. You know, the Kcse, it was the whole living organism, but now tropism, it is the part of the plant. Remember, the whole plant cannot move. The whole plant cannot move about. The whole plant cannot move about, but the part of the plant will basically move a little bit. So that is now what you call the tropism. So the tropism is as a result of growth. They grow towards that response. So there are also types of tropism, just like the other one. So we have phototropism. So phototropism now is the growth curvature in response to the direction and intensity of light. Okay, yes. So phototropic, photo, as the name suggests, photo, light. So now with response to light. So when the shoots, when they grow towards the sun, so we say that the shoots, they are positively phototropic. It is not for you, it is photo. The spelling mistake there, photo. So shoots are positively phototropic while roots are negatively phototropic. Why are we saying that roots are negatively phototropic? Because we are talking about light. The shoots are the upper part of the plant, the leaves and all that. So when these leaves and the upper part of the plant, they are growing towards the sun, they are growing upwards, they are trying to go towards sunlight. So that is positive, because I told you that in response, when something moves toward the stimuli, that is positive response. When it moves away from stimuli, that is negative response. So the roots, they normally grow towards the soil, the earth surface. So it's like they're moving away from the sunlight. So they are negatively phototropic. Let's go to chemotropism. As the name suggests, chemicals. So when the part of the plant grow towards a chemical, that is now chemotropism. So, and the best example is always fertilization in plants. This one is now in plants. So fertilization in plants, and the example is here. It's something that can also come in exam. Yeah, it has always been in exam before. So when the pollen tube grow, towards the embryo sac. So when the pollen tube grow towards the embryo sac, that is chemotropism. Remember, in animals, the male gametes, the entire male gamete will move, so it is chemotaxis. But here, remember, in plants, the entire part of it cannot move about. Okay, yes, it cannot move about. So it is the growth, because tropism, there's only a portion of the plant that moves. The portion part of the plant is what moves. So this one is now chemotropism. So chemotropism is where now the pollen tube now grows toward the embryo sac. Geotropism, geo now is related to gravity. So growth curvature in response to gravity. Okay, so in response to gravity. So in response to gravity, that is now geotropism. So that is now the roots. The roots always grow towards the soil or towards the earth surface, and it is the earth or it is the soil that, because what is gravity? The force that pulls objects towards the center of the earth, and the center of the earth is the soil. So when the roots, they grow towards the center of the earth, they are growing towards the soil and downward. They are obeying gravity. So roots are normally positively geotropic, while the shoots now, of course, are going to be negative geotropic, because they are growing against gravity. They are going upwards, yet we expect gravity to move things downwards. So that is geotropism. Let me number them. That is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. Okay, let's move. 5. Let's go to number 4, hydrotropism. As the name suggests, hydro, water. So hydro, number 4, hydro. So that is basically now growth curvature in response to water or moisture. And we all know that the plant roots, they normally grow towards the soil where they can get some water. So plant roots are positively hydrotropic because they are trying to seek some water in the soil. The 5th one is called thigmotropism, or we can also call it haptotropism. It has 2 names, thigmotropism or haptotropism. So now, what is it all about? Thigmotropism is now the growth curvature in response to contact with objects, as shown by the tendrils. Do you know the passion fruit? So the passion fruit, you normally find that it does not have a very strong stem. So the passion fruit normally, if it grows somewhere, it will try to twine around other branches or other stems of other plants. Or if you decide to grow, if you decide to maybe plant some passion fruit, then you'll have to put some supporting poles so that it can twine around it because it has weak stem. Okay, so the growth curvature in a manner that now the plant is able to climb other plants for support. That is now thigmotropism or haptotropism. So they twine, they climb and they surround themselves around other plants so that they can seek some support. That is thigmotropism or haptotropism. The last one, number 6, is thermotropism. As the name suggests, thermo is temperature. So thermotropism is now growth curvature in response to variation in temperature. So in temperature, it's not a very common one, but in case if there's a growth curvature in response to variation in temperature, we'll call it thermotropism. So what are now the importance? What is the survival value of tropic response? What is the survival value of tropic response? Okay, what is like the importance of these tropic responses? So the very first one is phototropism. Remember, phototropism is now the growth curvature in variation to light. So what is the importance of phototropism? The importance of phototropism, it will enable the plant leaves to grow towards the sun. And when they grow towards the sun, remember photosynthesis. And photosynthesis, what is photosynthesis? It is the process whereby plants manufacture their own food. So, and plants manufacture their own food in the leaves. So when the leaves, and one of the requirements during photosynthesis is sunlight. So these leaves, they need to grow towards the sun so that the plants are able to manufacture their own food. So it is because of phototropism that will enable the plant to grow towards the sun, and if they've grown towards the sun, then they'll be able to get the sunlight, and through sunlight they'll be able to photosynthesize and prepare their own food that they'll use to grow and grow. So that is the importance. Phototropism exposes the leaves in position to maximize light absorption, enhancing photosynthesis. The second one is haptotropism. Remember, haptotropism is also called thigmotropism. How does it help? Haptotropism enables plants, not plants. Plants enables plants. Enable plants to obtain mechanical support, especially non-woody plants. So I've explained it. So the plants that have weak stem, they'll be able to get some support because of the haptotropism or thigmotropism, because the plant will twine and climb other plants for support. Geotropism is gravity. Gravity will enable the roots to grow deep into the soil. And what is the importance of plants growing deep into the soil? So that they can have some anchorage. Anchorage is now holding the plant firmly in the soil, so that even if there is wind, on a windy day, the plant will still be firm. Okay, so geotropism makes the plant root grow deep into the soil, offering firm anchorage. Chemotropism. Yes, so chemotropism, this is now the growth curvature towards the chemicals, and which now the chemicals here, they normally assist in fertilization, because the example I gave you in the previous concept was now the pollen tube growing towards the embryo sac, and that is how fertilization in plants work, because it is the pollen tube that normally grows towards the embryo sac. So as a result of that, it will assist in fertilization. So the importance of chemotropism is it facilitates fertilization in plants. And the last one is now hydrotropism. So hydrotropism is now the growth curvature in variation to water. So because of that, the roots are able to seek water because of hydrotropism. They'll now try to grow deep into this. They'll try to go deep into the soil so that they can seek some water. So these are the survival value of tropic responses. So whenever you're asked the survival value of these tropic responses, you need to be very specific. You must say that phototropism does that, haprotropism does that, geotropism does that, chemotropism the same, hydrotropism the same. So you need to know them in specific. You have to name them. So we want to now compare tropic and tactic responses. We want to now compare the two. We want to compare the comparison of tropic and tactic responses. So we want to see the difference. So our main aim is the differences actually. So it's something that has been in exam before. So let me remind you the difference first, the definition difference. Remember, the taxis will work in animals because in taxis or tactic, we want the entire organism to move from point A to point B. But in tropism or tropic responses, we only want a portion of a plant to move, or not even to move, but to grow. So we want a portion of a plant to grow. Not the entire plant. We are not taking the plant from that point A. No, it is still going to remain at that point, but it is only a part of it that is going to grow. Okay? Yes. So that is the difference. So tropism, we can basically say that of course they work in plants, and the taxis, now the plural, this is now taxes, they basically work in animals. So you can also look at it in that sense. So the difference, so differences. So the first difference, it is growth response. Okay, it is growth response and permanent. Yes. Of course, tropism, it is going to be permanent because after the growth has happened, it cannot be reversible. You cannot reverse it. Okay, yes, so it is permanent. But this one, of course, it is temporary because the cockroach, after running away from light, it will again come back to light. It will come back again to light, then it will run again. So yes, it keeps changing, okay? Because now the plant, because for example, if maybe you went into the house because there was a lot of heat, later in the day, you'll get back outside. So it is temporary. Response are slow because this one involves growth. Of course, it is going to be slow. This one is now the movement. The animal is able to move, so it is faster. Another one is brought about by growth hormones. Of course, for growth to occur, you need the hormones. Some of them are called the auxins. There's something called the gibberellins. We'll talk about them in detail, but they are brought about by growth hormones. So are not influenced by growth hormones because this is just movement. Movement are facilitated. They are facilitated by the muscles. So this one is movement. They are facilitated by the muscles. Okay. So this one is facilitated by the growth hormones, not facilitated by the growth hormones. Then the last type of response was the nastic responses. And I told you that nastic responses can also be called nastism. Nastism is the same as nastic responses. Remember, there were 3 types of responses. So nastic responses. Okay? So nastic responses. Now, you know, the taxis, we knew the direction where the stimuli was coming from. For example, light was from one side because for the cockroach to run away, it means that there is a portion where there is light and there is a place that there is no light. So it means that there's a specific place where the light is coming from. Also from the tropism, you also need to induce the light from one side and the other side need to be dark. But now in nastism now, there is no specific direction. You cannot say that the light is coming from which side. It is something that there is no specific direction. Yani inatokea, hiyo kitu inatokea na side yoyote. Yani inaweza, huwezi sema like inatoka na side moja. Hapana. So kwa ile taxis lazima kitu ikuwe inatoka side moja, ndio kitu chague niende kwa light ama niende kwa darkness. Tropism pia the same. Lazima kukue na hizo 2 options. Lazima ikuwe like kuna maji na kuna place hakuna maji, ndio chague kitu moja. kuna mahali kuna oxygen na kuna mahali kuna oxygen. Hiyo ni tropism na tactic. Hiyo ni tropism na tropism na taxis. Lakini sasa kwa nastism huwezi sema hii kitu inatoka side gani. Kwa nastism huwezi sema like inatoka, yani hiyo kitu iko general, haina hiyo nini tofauti. Aya, so nastic responses, these are non-directional. You can even see from its definition, these are non-directional movements of parts of plant in response of various stimuli. Okay, yes. So some of them, folding of leaves in hot weather. So when it is hot, the leaves are basically being folded. You cannot say that there is sunshine at a certain part, there is no sunshine in because all of the leaves that are experiencing now the sunshine at once. So the only option that they have is to fold their leaves. So that is nastic response. Opening and closing of flowers in response to light intensity. Yes, that is also nastic response. And the closing of leaves of, so this one is normally being asked a lot. There's a plant called Mimosa pudica. There's a plant called Mimosa pudica. This one is a scientific name. That's why it is written in italics. So Mimosa pudica, when it is touched, normally it tries to close its leaves. When you touch it, it normally tries to close its leaves. So that is also a type of nastic responses. So let's now let's look about some of these types. Types of nastism. So types of nastism. So the very first one is nyctinasty. So the first type of nastism. Okay, these types of nastism, they only like to set the number 2. This one, this haptonasty. So they normally love to just ask about the haptonasty. The rest, not that much. So if you find them to be a little bit complicated for you, then the one that you need to master is just haptonasty. The other types are not really common in exam. And also this nyctinasty a little bit. Sometimes you can also be asked in exam. Okay, but because it involves the sunflower. But so it means that if you want to maybe capture a few of them, this nyctinasty and this haptonasty. Like in this haptonasty, they set it a lot. So maybe the others you can ignore if you feel maybe their words are a little bit tricky to master. But trust me, it is still simple. Try just to know all of them. So the first type of nastism is nyctinasty. So nyctinasty is now, it's the movement in response to difference in light intensity and temperature changes of the day and night, as seen in the sunflower. So sunflower, how does it behave? So when there's a lot of light, you'll find that the sunflower, it has drooped. Okay, it will be in this sense. When there's a lot of light, you'll find that the sunflower, this is how it will be looking like. Okay, but when there is now that bright sunshine light, so maybe you'll find that it is exposed that way. The sunflower will be exposed. But when there's a lot of sunlight, it will basically try to droop. So that is now the sleep movement, nyctinasty. We have the haptonasty. So haptonasty, there's a plant called Mimosa pudica. Mimosa pudica, if you touch the leaves of it, they'll try to close. So that is called haptonasty. So haptonasty is the type of response in Mimosa pudica. It will close its leaves. It is a response to touch. Chemonasty, as the name suggests, chemonasty. Chemonasty is now with the response to chemicals. Okay, so it's normally seen in insectivorous plants. So in insectivorous plants, what normally happens is very simple. Insectivorous plants. So insectivorous plants, they normally do not have nitrogen. Okay, they normally do not have nitrogen. So under the insects, some of the insects normally have the nitrogen, and they need nitrogen. Nitrogen is very important in plants. So how do they get the nitrogen? So they digest some enzyme, some insects. So an example is the sundew, there's Venus flytrap. So in this sundew or in Venus flytrap, they are in a manner that if any insect land on them, of course, first they have the sweet smell, so the insects will be attracted to go to them. And some of them have glue. If the if the insect try to maybe pose on them and maybe they move inside them, they'll be able to be attached to the glue, and now the insectivorous plant will be able to squeeze that juice and take the nitrogen and digest it and use it for growth purposes. Alternatively, there's also another one that they have sensitive airs. If by any case the insect lands on it, it will close its leaves, it will kill the insect and drain that juice and take the nitrogen. So that is how they behave. So they are interested in the chemical that is the nitrogen. So that is chemonasty. It is seen in what? It is seen in insectivorous plants. The last one is hydronasty. So hydronasty now is in response to humidity, water, the moisture. So as seen, there's a certain type of flower, it's called the dandelion. Okay, yes, so dandelion normally I think it's in Naivasha. Okay, so when the air is moist, it normally closes its flowers. Okay, that is dandelion. Normally it closes its flowers as a result of moist air. Moist air is now, because what is humidity? Humidity is the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere. Okay, so that is hydronasty. So I've told you that the most important type of nastism is haptonasty, and maybe that one for the sunflower, nectinasty. But you can also remember the chemonasty for the insectivorous plants, that they are able to digest nitrogen from insects. The last part of thing we are looking at are now the survival value of nastism. The survival value of nastism. What is the importance of nastic responses? So because of how they behave, they'll be able to protect the inner delicate parts of the flower. For example, that hydronasty in dandelion flower. Okay, so when there is moist air, it will close. So because of that, it will be able to protect the delicate parts of the flower. There's a reduction of transpiration because when they close their leaves, for example, Mimosa pudica, after closing its leaves, because biology tells us that closing of leaves normally does what? Reduces the rate of transpiration, because transpiration is the process whereby plants lose water in form of water vapor. Regulation of temperature. Yes, they're also able to regulate the temperature. For example, the sunflower, that is nectinasty. The sunflower, when it is too hot, it will close, it will droop. The sunflower seed will droop and it will avoid a lot of temperature. And also a way of obtaining limited mineral nutrients, e.g. nitrogen, by insectivorous plants. I believe that is self-explanatory because I'd explained. So in our part 2 of the topic, we'll now be talking about coordination in plants. So that is what we'll be looking at in the next class. I believe you are able to understand a lot of the concept. Thank you so much. I'll continue to upload more content for you. Continue watching, and I believe you prepare for Kcse 2024 and even the future Kcse exam. Thank you so much. Bye for today.